Hello and welcome. My name is Alan, and we are back with more notable names in Pacific Islander and Asian American History Week. Month. Month. Asian American. Pacific Islander and Asian American History. Anyway, today we are looking at Patsy Mink. She was born Patsy Matsu Takamoto in Paia, Hawaii territory on the island of Maui on December the 6th, 1927. So Hawaii at this point was still a territory. It didn't become a state until 59? Yeah, 59. So yeah. Her parents were Suematsu and Mitama Takamoto and were second generation Japanese immigrants to the U.S. So it was Suematsu and Mitama's parents who immigrated to America. Hawaii became U.S. territory in 1900, but not admitted to a state until 59. During college, Patsy encountered racial and gender discrimination, which inspired her later advocacy for civil rights and equal opportunity. This is from nationalparkservice.gov, by the way, is where this information is from. As a junior at the University of Nebraska at Lincoln, she successfully challenged racial segregation in student housing, and after receiving her bachelor's degree in zoology from the University of Hawaii in Manoa, Patsy applied to several medical schools. Because she was a woman, her applications were all rejected. Remember, this is still at a time when women just didn't have the same rights. She was born in 27, so we're looking at about 55 to about 59 or so. But yeah, Patsy switched gears and applied to the University of Chicago Law School. Even though she was born in Hawaii, she was mistakenly accepted as part of a foreign student quota, and there was only one other woman in her class, Mina Rodnan Buck. During law school, Patsy met and married John Mink, a graduate student, and their daughter Gwendolyn was born in 1952. Wait. Okay, 45 to 49. I miscounted my dates. So yeah. Her after earning her law degree, Chicago law firms refused to hire her because of her race and interracial marriage. Interracial marriage was still a big thing. I can't remember the exact date, but there had to be a whole court case to separate to knock down the bias against interracial marriage that many states had. Loving v. Virginia is the name of the case. But anyway, the Minks moved to the territory of Hawaii, where Patsy became the first woman in Hawaii licensed as an attorney. She was admitted to the bar in 1953, permitting her to practice law in the territory. Yet firms continued to turn her down. Undeterred, she taught business law, starting her own private practice, and joined the Democratic Party. In 1955, she became an attorney for Hawaii Territorial Legislature, and the following year was elected to the Territorial House and later to the Territorial and State Senates, because, 59, which was just around the corner, it becomes a state. When Congress admitted Hawaii as a state in 1959, she ran for the sole seat in the U.S. House of Representatives, and because she sometimes broke with other Democrats in the Hawaii legislature and resisted their efforts to influence her politics, local party leaders resisted her campaign and contributed to her defeat. After the 1960 census, Hawaii obtained a second member in the U.S. House, and in 1964, Patty successfully ran for the new seat. She served in the House from 1965 until 1977, the first woman of color and the first Asian American to do so. As a congresswoman, Patsy was a fierce advocate for women, children, and minorities, and she was a strong supporter of President Lyndon B. Johnson's Great Society programs that promoted civil rights legislation. Think the Civil Rights Act, and there's a number of others, but we're looking at those type of laws, acts that were passed. Some of Patty's most notable accomplishments were as a member of the Committee for Education and Labor, and fought for various educational reforms, including a national daycare system, Head Start, and the Women's Educational Equity Act. She is perhaps best known for her work with Representative Edith Green and Senator Birch Bayh on Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972. Now we're getting into the Equal Rights Amendment era. They're trying to get the equal rights for women. You could think of the burning of the bras and the hippies, and they're just now getting to where they can sign papers on their own, because up until this point, even though they had gained the right to vote, they still had to have their husbands there to do certain things. So it's ridiculous that what they weren't allowed to do. Title IX prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in educational institutions that receive federal funding. As its major author and sponsor, Patsy has been called the mother of Title IX. Even when it put her at odds with her own party, Patsy was unafraid to speak out. She was one of the only members of Congress to oppose the Vietnam War and testified against the Supreme Court nomination of Judge George Harold Carswell, citing his discrimination against women. In 1971, she sued the Environmental Protection Agency to release documents about nuclear testing under the Freedom of Information Act. That year, she became the first Asian American woman to run for president. Running as an anti-war candidate, she opposed the Nixon's administration's reversals of civil rights legislation and the continuation of the Vietnam War. 1976, She gave up her House seat to run for the U.S. Senate and would lose to fellow Congressman Spark Matsunaga. After this defeat, President Jimmy Carter appointed her the Assistant Secretary of State for Oceans and International, Environmental, and Scientific Affairs. After leaving this post in 1979, she spent several years supporting community and political organizations in Hawaii. She was elected and eventually chaired the Honolulu City Council. Even when out of elected office, she remained focused on lawmaking, and in 1989 she founded the Public Reporter, which was a watchdog organization that reported on the actions of legislative committees to help the public better understand the lawmaking process. 1990, she would return to the U.S. House, being elected once again, and during this second tenure, she continued to advocate for gender equality in education. She also co-founded the Congressional Asian Pacific American Caucus in 1994 and served as its chair. Patsy died from complications of chickenpox just 1 week after she won the House primary election in 2002. It was too late to remove her name from the general election ballot, and on November 5th, 2002, she was posthumously reelected to Congress. Her vacant seat was filled by Ed Case after a special election. After her death, Title IX was renamed the Patsy Mink Equal Opportunity in Education Act, and she is buried at the National Memorial Cemetery of the Pacific in Hawaii. So yeah. Now, this is from the Library of Congress. First woman of color in Congress, Patsy Mink. She lived 1927 to 2002 and was a vigorous and tireless champion of women's rights and an early and vocal opponent to the Vietnam War and leader in issues involving education, the environment, welfare, and civil rights, and was elected in 1964, becoming the first woman of color and the first Asian American woman to serve in Congress. She represented the people of Hawaii twice, the first from 1965 to 1977, and again from 1990 until she died in 2002. She would also serve as Jimmy Carter's administration as the Assistant Secretary of State for Oceans and International, Environmental, and Scientific Affairs, was president of Americans for Democratic Action, served on the Honolulu City Council, maintained a private law practice, and founded the Public Reporter, an organization that monitored and publicized the activities of the Hawaii State Legislature. She is best remembered for her role in helping to secure passage of Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 and its companion legislation, the 1974 Women's Educational Equity Act. In 2007, the manuscript division celebrated the completion of a 3.5-year project to process Mink's rich and voluminous papers, which had been donated to the Library of Congress in 2003 by her husband and daughter. Copy of the extensive finding is available for the collection. But yeah, Patsy Mink. Let's look at Britannica. Born December 6, 1927, Empire, Hawaii. Died September 8, 2002 in Honolulu, Hawaii. First Asian American woman and second woman ever from Hawaii to be elected. So she was first woman of color, first Asian American woman, and second woman for Hawaii elected. So yeah, served twice in the U.S. House of Representatives. Suematsu Takemoto. I guess her father was a civil engineer. She went to the University of Hawaii for zoology and chemistry, but was rejected by a number of medical schools, and that's why she decided to go into University of Chicago law, meeting her husband, marrying. Let's see. She was very anti-war, pro-rights. Let's see. She represented the 2nd District of Hawaii during both terms. She was succeeded by Daniel Akaka, but then succeeded him to take her second term. So that's pretty interesting. Oh, excuse me. Honolulu City Council 82 to 86. Secretary of the House Democratic Caucus. Had only the one child she had with John Mink, which I think we read it was a daughter, so. She was refused the right to take the bar exam due to the loss of her Hawaiian territorial residency upon marriage, but she would challenge the statute. And though she won the right to take the test and pass the examination, she could not find public or private employment because she was married and had a child. Again, it was a near death sentence if you were hoping to have a career as a woman in those days. It, you know, having a child, it was always taught, you should be at home taking care of the children of your child. So, with or without a husband, that's what a woman was expected to do at that point. And especially without a husband, a lot of things were often outside a woman's reach. Not only was she the first Asian American, she was the first Japanese American to serve in the territorial house for Hawaii, first woman to serve in the territorial senate for Hawaii, then she was elected to the new Hawaii State Senate, becoming the first Asian American woman to be elected and serve in a state legislature in the United States. There was so much that was considered men's jobs. And government often was one of those. She would serve 24 years altogether, with both terms in the United States House of Representatives, Okay, so the mother, Mitama Tateyama, was a homemaker, and the daughter of immigrant Gojiro Tateyama and Suru Wakashige. Like I said, her father was a I think I said civil engineer. Family, which had 11 children, lived in a shack by the Waikamoe stream. Now remember, we're talking about the grandparents on her mother's side right now. Her father, Suematsu Takemoto, civil engineer, he graduated from the University of Hawaii at Manoa in 1922, the first Japanese American to graduate from the University of Hawaii with a degree in civil engineering. For several years, he was the only Japanese American civil engineer working at the sugar plantation in Maui. and was passed over for promotion to chief engineer several times during his career, the positions instead being offered to mostly white Americans, of course. After in 1945, after World War II, he moved to Honolulu with his family and established his own land surveying company. She entered Maui High School 1 year before Honolulu was attacked by Japan. Despite the local Japanese being treated as if they were enemies, she ran for and won her first election, becoming student body president in her senior year. Left to right. Front, Esther. So here's Patsy. 1948 in the University of Hawaii. She had a number of different jobs, working as a typist for a little bit at Hickam Air Force Base. And then at the Honolulu Academy of Arts. That's where she was inspired to go to the University of Chicago Law. She applied for University of Chicago Law and Columbia University. Columbia rejected her, but University of Chicago admitted her as a foreign student. So yeah, she would marry John Mink, who graduated with a master's degree in geology. Okay. He was a former Air Force navigator and World War II veteran, so. She had to fight for her right to be allowed to pass the bar exam because Hawaii tried to proclaim, since she was married, she had lost her citizenship, but she had to prove she had never actually lived in Pennsylvania, challenging the territorial law, and was able to win the case to take the bar exam as a Hawaii resident, becoming the first Japanese American woman licensed to practice law in Hawaii. So she had a lot of firsts. During a time when so much was changing. first woman with Japanese ancestry to serve in the Territorial House in Hawaii. 2 years later, first woman to serve in the Territorial Senate. Let's see. So yeah, she made a lot of firsts fighting for rights and being anti-war. Marched for the right for Anita Hill to give testimony during the hearings when they were trying to confirm Clarence Thomas to the Supreme Court. Let's see. Co-sponsor of the DREAM Act and staunchly opposed the creation of Homeland Security, fearing it might avert civil liberties and result in another occurrence of policies like the internment camps for Japanese Americans during World War II. Well, we're pretty damn close to that point right now. So she had serious rights to worry about that. In 2007, Central Oahu Regional Park in Oahu, Hawaii was renamed Patsy Mink Central Oahu Regional Park in her honor. Posthumously honored with the Presidential Medal of Freedom in 2014 from Barack Obama. In June 2022, a portrait of her by Sharon Sprung was unveiled in the U.S. Capitol, where it now hangs. So yeah, documentary films about her life and her role in Title IX have been released. 2008, 2014. Let's see. In 2024, the United States Mint honored her with a quarter, which was the 12th coin released in the American Women Quarter program. Looks like everything. So yeah, Patsy Mink. First in a number of things opening the way for women of color, Asian American women. Yeah. So, pretty interesting stuff. But we'll go ahead and end this episode here. As always, educate thyself. Think, read, study, learn. Someone tells you something you have trouble believing, ask them to cite their sources. I'll be putting my links and sources below in the box below the video. Thank you all for watching. I'll see you all in the next one. Until then, later.